kind of basically go down exactly what we know as of this moment, okay? Because like I said, all of this is fresh. So if I get anything wrong or if I mess anything up because the data is like older or maybe not accurate, I apologize in advance. But let's go ahead and talk about what we know right this second. The first thing that we do know is the fact that Sony is releasing this camera with 20 frames per second, okay? Right off the bat, that's amazing. No other camera has been that high in burst shooting. The second thing that I want to point out is that this camera also is going to be blackout free. So some of you know that with DSLRs, even when the mirror pops up, you do get a slight bit of blackout period, with your camera. But with this camera, it's not even going to black out the screen. It's going to have a continuous live feed going right to the electronic viewfinder. I don't know if that's going to be available in the live view mode or not, but at least in the EVF, you're going to have zero blackout. We're looking at 60 frames per second EA calculations, silent and vibration free, 1/32,000th of a second shutter speed. So for all of you guys and girls out there that love to shoot high-speed sync, this is definitely going to be the camera for you. Okay? Here's the other thing. Now, this is bigger than any other autofocusing point tracking system that I've ever seen in my entire life. 693 AF autofocusing tracking points with 93% coverage of the sensor. Okay? I don't even know how to imagine that many autofocusing points. I mean, that's just huge. So obviously the sensor size hasn't gotten any bigger. It's still a full frame sensor. So that means they've had to make the autofocusing points much, much smaller. So in theory, that ought to give us much higher accuracy and reliability as far as what the camera is supposed to be focusing on. And also, we're going to be getting some full frame 4K video capture as well. So we do have a couple of different videos that Sony just recently released. I'm going to go ahead and throw it up here on the screen. Now, this is the product feature video. Another big thing that I want to point out is that also this camera is also finally going to be having dual card slots. I thought that was something that, a lot of people were really, really interested in, and we finally now have it. So, big win for Sony on this one because all of their previous quote-unquote pro line cameras have never had dual card slots, and that was always one of the biggest gripes. So, again, within less than a year, we now have dual card slots. And as you can see here, this is the blackout free shooting. It's just going to sort of simulate every time you take a shot without actually interrupting the feed. Again, we're doing high frequency AF AE tracking. Now, it did say, let me go ahead and pause this real quick. If you'll notice, though, there is a little star here. And this says, down here at the bottom, it says, at shutter speeds higher than 1/125th of a second. The number of autofocus exposure calculations will depend on the lens used. So there are going to be some buts in this high-frequency AF AE tracking. So for those of you that still do burst shooting, for those of you that are still going to be doing high-speed sports photography, you may want to look into what lenses this feature is going to be interacting with properly, and if they're going to be releasing any new lenses that are actually going to be utilizing this to its full advantage. So again, we're now touting 693 points, phase detection autofocus with approximately 93% coverage. This is where the silent shutter, distortion comparison, conventional electronic shutter. This is the anti-distortion shutter. That must be a new thing for them, to be perfectly honest with you. This has got to be a new thing because they're right. The electronic shutters have not always been that good on the mirrorless cameras. There has always been some level of readout, sensor readout distortion, and apparently they have engineered a way to make that go away. and you can just go ahead and color me extremely happy. Now it looks like we're going to be keeping 24 megapixels, which is honestly, that's a good thing. When you start getting into these high-speed sports and sports cameras, the higher the resolution that they end up putting out there. You know, if this was a huge resolution style camera, there's no way you would be able to get that many frames, because they're also touting a 200 raw burst on this camera. And there's just no way you could get that with anything much, much higher, at least not with current technology. So I think that Sony is trying to balance or strike a positive balance between high speed and accuracy. And this camera is definitely going to be worth what they're asking for it. I also want to note this, the high sensitivity up to ISO 2004-800. The one thing that I do want to frames per second refresh rate. So in theory, we should not be missing much of anything with this camera. It is going to have touch control with a tilt screen. So not a fully articulating screen, but a tilt screen. And they're saying touch control now. They're not just saying touch autofocus. So this is something completely different. You know, touch autofocus was a 6500, which really wasn't all that good. But now we're actually looking at a full-on touch control. So that's what I'm looking more forward to, is a heavily improved touch control interface. And if Sony truly has finally pulled this off and made this at least on par with Panasonic like 2 or 3 years ago, you're going to hear absolutely no complaints out of me. And just a quick note, if you didn't see that there, even though we do have dual media slots, one of them is going to be UHS 2 compatible. So that I don't know if they're going to make one just a standard SD, one that's only one UHS Mark 1 compatible. So I don't know if they're going to have it specially indicated or marked somewhere on the inside of the camera. That's just going to be maybe something we'll have to look out for. We'll have to get some deeper detail photos in order to figure this out. They've also improved the battery life. It's been doubled the battery capacity up to 480 frames on a single charge, and now they're going to be releasing in tandem with it a professional stamina grip, which will hold 2. If you didn't see that, it's going to hold 2 NPF Z100 batteries for up to 950 frames of continuous shooting. So although you will lose the ability to put a battery inside of the camera itself, it's not going to be some sort of an electronic connection on the back, you're still going to be able to get 950 continuous frames per second. Now, I haven't seen how these batteries are actually going to be loaded up into the grip. That may be something that they tell us, later on. I don't know if it's going to be like a quick loader or something like that, or if you have to push these in individually. But definitely high professional level of features, being able to automatically launch this camera with a grip that's already pre-made for this camera. So big, huge deal. And obviously the camera size really doesn't look like it's getting all that much bigger than what they've already got out now between the A7 line, the A7R, the A7S, and that kind of thing. So really, really huge deal here for Sony. Now, the price tag, from what I've been able to figure out thus far, is going to come in at around, this is in US dollars, around $4,500 US dollars. It is going to be available in May. So that's next month. In May of this year. All right. The Sony has been touting, at least during this announcement, has saying that it is the most capable camera ever. And that is not just most capable mirrorless camera. That is the most capable camera ever, both mirrorless or DSLR. Again, these are ridiculously good features, and I absolutely am kind of blown away. I really just, they've almost kind of outdone themselves. I really just don't even, I just can't hardly believe it. Especially for the price point, because even Sony's or even Nikon and Canon's top-of-the-line DSLRs, their flagships, that don't have anywhere near what this camera does, are usually pegging in right at about $5,000 to $6,000. The 1DX Mark II, I think it is, or the Canon flagship, is coming in at about $8,000. So this is not an unreasonable price for this type of camera. I mean, 24 megapixels is completely within the range of what you would want and what you would expect out of this type of camera. The market right now is becoming, it's getting to the point now where you have to innovate. And I see some huge innovations here. Like I said, the no blackout EVF, and that's at 20 frames per second. No one is going to be griping about that feature, especially the sports shooters. They're absolutely going to love that, because they'll be able to do live real-time tracking with absolutely nothing standing in their way. No blackout whatsoever. Not even, standard what they're acclimated to in optical DSLRs. I mean, they're not even going to be upset about it. Okay? But we're looking at 200 raw bursts with no buffering. Now, I'm going to assume that that's large and in part because of the ability to hold a UHS Mark II card. I don't know if they've done anything to revamp the processor on the inside or the DPS or whatever, but I do know that 24 megapixels with 200 raw images at 20 frames per second, this is an extremely capable camera. An extremely capable camera. I also want to go ahead and read a couple of other things that I've been able to find out here in just the last little bit. Apparently, this is coming directly from the Sony announcement. This is the world's first full-frame stacked CMOS sensor, 24.2 megapixel resolution, blackout-free continuous shooting at up to 20 frames per second for up to 241 raw shots or 362 JPEG images. I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and say that this is probably the best bursting sports camera thus far. So now I don't really see where sports shooters are actually ever going to have to compromise their image quality. Most sports shooters always have to burst in JPEG just because most cameras before this couldn't handle it. I think that this would also be pretty good for, fast moving bridal parties and stuff like that, where you've got to be moving all over the place. You've got, a lot of stuff going on. Also, the silent shutter mode, you're going to be able to use this in your churches, in your ceremonies, in your engagements, whatever. Silent shutter mode is just a huge thing for a lot of different photographers. We watch a press conference all the time where you just hear 400 photographers go click, 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 click. The 693 point focal plane phase detection autofocus points, that's just nuts. So, no one has ever seen that amount of focusing points on an APS, not an APS-C, a full frame CMOS sensor before. So again, a huge innovation. Again, when you have this size sensor with that many autofocusing points, you're basically looking at extremely small, extremely accurate. I'm hoping they're accurate. I'm not gonna hype it up beyond what it is, but I mean, generally, the more autofocusing points that you have, the more data you can read between focusing points and get a more accurate focus without as much hunting, because the focusing points are much closer, and they can usually share data between one another, and we can get finer details as far as like the edges of shoulders and heads and all that kind of stuff. So we should, in fact, have a much higher precision style autofocusing system in this camera. This thing also, I forgot to mention it, but it's also going to have an Ethernet port for file transfers. So for a lot of these high burst shooting photographers, what they're going to be doing is they're going to just be offloading. You know, they'll just plug right into their computer or whatever, their laptop, while they're out on location, and they're going to do high-speed file transfers with the Ethernet port that's actually built into this camera. Again, dual SD card slots, and the extended battery life. I mean, it's amazing. 5-axis in-body image stabilization with the right lenses. If you have optical steady shot on some of the lenses that Sony currently has out, a lot of these sport shooters, a lot of these other styles of photographers that generally have to depend on having a monopod or a tripod, and they're all kind of crammed in there together, this is no longer going to be a requirement. I mean, if the steady shot in the 5-axis in-body image stabilization is above what we've already got from Sony, there is a very good chance that you may not even need to bring any sticks with you to your shoot if the stabilization is in fact that good. You combine that with the ridiculous amount of burst that you're going to be getting out of this, and I'm aghast, at what this camera is actually going to be capable of. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at some of the comments that we got going on. Rishi says, such a perfect camera, but $6,000 is kind of crazy. Someone please fund me. Well, like I said, this camera is really targeted for the professional sports shooter market. This right here is perfectly positioned to take over at some point. Maybe even for the high-end full-frame Nikon and Canon cameras that have been so widely used over the years, this really could end up stealing so much market share because this camera does what the other guys do and a whole hell of a lot more. So Rishi also said this makes the A99 Mark II obsolete. I would say you're probably pretty close to correct. There are a few people out there that absolutely hate the A7 style of form factor. So a lot of people still tend to migrate on some level to some of these DSLR style cameras. So I don't think that it's going to be completely obsolete because there is a market out there for that chunkier grip, the bigger body and all that kind of thing. But I do seriously think that they really have done a lot to absorb or at least incorporate a lot of what the A99 Mark II actually had. Michael Way says, I guess the real question is, will you buy this camera? I don't think this camera is for me. I don't really think that I'm the target audience. I don't shoot sports. I guess that if I did, or if I did it on a regular enough basis, you bet your ass. I mean, this is an investment. When you're getting into this this amount of functionality built into this camera, you're not just doing it because you want to, dick around at your house with your, hobby as a hobby. This is a professional's camera. This is how a lot of people are going to be making their money. This is how a lot of people are going to be paying the bills and keeping a roof over their head. So I am not the target audience. But there are a lot of sports photographers out there right this second that are literally taking a small little doo-doo in their drawers and wishing that this thing was available right now. There's going to be so many people that are going to want to get their hands on this camera. Roger says, I think wedding photographers are more likely to get this than sports photographers. They have to offload all their Canon or Nikon telephotos. Yeah, and that's true. While there are a lot of sports shooters out there in the market, there are thousands upon thousands and thousands of wedding photographers, event photographers, photographers where they have to move around extremely fast, where they don't necessarily have the time to always set up a crew or set up anything. When they just need to capture the moment as it happens, a lot of news gathering organizations are probably going to be picking up this camera. This enables a lot of people, a lot of professionals to get what they need, just like they did with their Nikons and their Canons, but much, much faster and with no blackout. So that's another thing. With the high ISO, and then you're able to see pretty much in the dark through the EVF in the no blackout, a lot of these people are going to be able to take pictures even in in dark. So this is a very, very huge camera. The photography junkie says, I guess the A9 won't be a medium format camera after all. Man, I told you that it wasn't going to be. But what I did say was that I was confused, and a lot of people were. A lot of people thought that the A9 was actually going to be their very high resolution style professional line of cameras. That it was going to be like 72 megapixel sensor and all this other kind of stuff. So apparently the lower resolution is actually the A9. So what they've got cooked up for that extremely high resolution sensor that they're supposed to be releasing either in 4 days in Las Vegas or in June. I think they have another announcement in June. So they're either going to announce it in 4 days, which, I mean, I'm on pins and needles right now just trying to figure out, what they could possibly be releasing then. Or it's going to be the announcement in June. I'm guessing, this is just my guess, is that because NAB is more about the National Association of Broadcasters show, I'm thinking they're probably going to lean more towards the camcorders. I could be 100% off, but that's just my prediction. Cry Havoc says, is this an A-mount camera? No, it is not. This is, in fact, an E-mount camera, or an EF mount camera. It is their mirrorless line. The A-mounts are DSLRs. They actually have mirrors, so this is not an A-mount camera. Michael Way says, 1/32,000th of a second shutter speed. That seems insane. Where would one use that? Looking at the sun. I can think of all different types of scenarios where this would be amazing. I don't know of any of anyone that couldn't make use of this if they did high-speed sync, because light travels much faster than that. So being able to stop down the focusing system, this camera is a beast. Okay, and under no circumstances is this thing to be shit on. This thing is like a literal beast. In theory, on paper, I will not be a fanboy. I am saying that on paper, this thing sounds unbelievable. As with everything, we need to see it in practice first. High-res model could equal the A9R. This was from Frederick. There's a very real possibility. I don't know. The high-resolution model could actually just be the A7R Mark II camera, but I don't think of cameras. I don't know. I mean, there's just a million ways that they could go with that. Captain Scott says, as a professional pet photographer, focus speed and quiet shutter is a game changer, and I 110% agree. If anyone has ever done sports or child photography where it's not a posed situation and you're basically just trying to capture a candid, this camera is going to be for you. Especially if you make a living from it. Now, if you're just thinking that you're going to spend, $6,000 and take pictures of your kitty cats, then I mean, you are not the target market. But for people that do a constant pet photography, anything where people are moving very fast or where the animals just don't do as you instruct them to, firstly because they don't speak the language, then having the ability to just burst out those shots and capture what you can as soon as humanly possible, this is a game changer for a lot of people. The photography junkie says, so assuming that the high-res camera isn't a medium format, do you think that they will ever use sensor shifting to produce such high-resolution images? I don't know what they're going to use. Sony has innovated quite a bit here lately. I have been massively impressed with everything that they put out. But according to them, the sensor, let me see if I can find it here. It was in there. I don't think I can find it right now, but this is I think this is a stack sensor. Is that what they said? It's another backside illuminated stack sensor. But they're also claiming that this camera is going to be having, that it's going to have extremely high sensitivity and wide dynamic range. So I want to go ahead and read this to you all because we didn't actually talk about sensitivity or dynamic range at all. The unique, excuse me, the unique design of the A9 image sensor represents the pinnacle, strong language here, of Sony device technology. The 24.2 megapixel full frame stacked CMOS sensor is back illuminated, allowing to capture maximum light and produce outstanding true-to-life image quality. The sensor also enables the diverse ISO range of 100 to 5100 or 51,200, expandable to 50 all the way out to 204,800. So we have a native ISO range of 100 to 51,200. So, that's an extremely usable range. I mean, if that is the native ISO range, no one is going to be pissing and moaning about this camera. If the 500 or if the 51,200 is actually usable, you're not going to find a single solitary sports, wedding, or otherwise type of photographer that has to shoot in extremely weird or unpredictable lighting conditions. No one is going to be upset about that. And if the expanded range, all the way up to 204,800, is actually going to be somewhat usable, we might be able to make a few compromises there because of the in-body image stabilization. A lot of these photographers will be able to slow their shutter speed down and still acquire decent shots in low light. So ensuring optimum image quality with minimum noise at all settings. Now, that little last line there has me interested. I'm wondering if they truly have potentially moved some of their A7S, some of their sensor tech over into this camera, so I don't really know. But I'm interested to see nonetheless. The enhanced Bionz X processor plays a large part in the image quality as well, as it helps to minimize noise in the higher sensitivity range, while also reducing the need to limit ISO sensitivity in situations where the highest quality image is required. Okay, now, we also didn't talk about this, but the new A9 also supports uncompressed 14-bit RAW, ensuring that users can get the most out of the wide dynamic range of the sensor. So this thing is just it's a total beast. No one is really going to be able to come very close to this camera, at least for a while. This is what people have been asking for. I know that I have. I mean, I've wanted to see much more usable, higher expanded ISO ranges. Now, obviously, you could get that with the A7S, but you didn't get the in-body image stabilization, and you also only had contrast phase detect autofocusing in those cameras. So there were a lot of downsides. So if you picked your battles correctly and you had multiple cameras to deal with multiple situations, this camera seems like it's going to be able to deal with a lot of different situations. Even if you didn't use all of these hyper-advanced features to their fullest, there's going to be very few things other than resolution that you're not going to be able to deal with this camera. Captain Scott says, I used to shoot a bunch of flying liquids. This would be insane for that. Flashes aren't as reliable as we would like. It's true. Are they going to continue the A7 series? As far as I know, they are not doing away with any of the A7 line of cameras whatsoever. ScoredX says $2,000 less than the Canon and the Nikon's top end, and that's exactly my point. Those cameras, those flagships from both Canon and Nikon, they're fantastic cameras. No one denies that they don't produce beautiful images. I mean, that's pretty much all that we've seen for 50 years out of Canon and Nikon. They were the best. They were the best. But they have slowly stopped innovating and have slowly they're slowly making themselves more and more irrelevant because they refuse to give the photographers that they've been serving or they've been taking their money from for 20 or 30 years, and they release something every 2 years, and it's just like these minor, small, just crazy, stupid little details, and no one gives a crap about them when they're finally released because some other guys have already released 2 or 3 of those features in the past 6 months or a year. So no one's excited when Nikon or Canon finally does it. I mean, they're glad that they finally did, but they're not excited. They're not blown away. Their panties are still on the entire time. XChay says, do you think the camera will be good for landscape? Well, it's going to be a full frame. I don't really think that this camera is necessarily targeted for you if you're interested in landscapes. I would look more towards, something with higher resolution. So maybe like an A7R Mark II. Plus, it'd save you about $1,500. Michael Way says, looks like no fully articulating screen might not be for the sports demographic. Well, I mean, a lot of sports photographers have been doing sports photography without a fully articulating screen for years and years and years. So I can seriously see this cutting into a lot of Canon's profit. They may be number one right now, but they really haven't done enough, in my personal opinion, to stay where they're at. A lot of people stick around because of Canon's cross-type autofocusing system. That is an extremely accurate, extremely powerful autofocusing system, but I don't necessarily think that, the fact that they haven't included several big major features in their latest cameras, I think that's hurt them quite a bit. And with Sony releasing this type of camera with all of these autofocusing points, with this amazing level of burst in RAW, or over 300 shots in JPEG, this is going to eat up so much of Canon and Nikon's Pro lineup. There's also another thing that I want to point out, because I know that a lot of people have maybe kind of shied away from Sony in the past. Sony has also been saying, and they apparently made a pledge that they were going to be expanding their Pro support, and they're going to have to, if they get a lot of people actually buying this camera. They have to service those professionals. So there's no way that they can leave these guys out here, on the line to dry with no backup, not knowing if they're going to have any replacement parts or have a replacement camera sent out to their location if something happens to fail while on a job or on a shoot. They have to have confidence that Sony is going to back up their products for the professional line. I don't know what the qualifications are as far as what they would consider you as far as a professional photographer. I don't know if you have to buy a certain amount of their gear, if you have to buy a certain dollar amount of their gear before you're considered a Sony professional or whatever. But if they do keep the barrier relatively low, say, look, if you buy one of our Pro line of cameras, whether that be a A7S, A7R, or this new A9, then you are automatically covered. If you have any lens issues, we got you covered. Just whatever the case may be. But I also wanted to show you guys this video here. Now this is the video where they were talking about the structure of the sensor. This is a conventional full or front illuminated CMOS sensor, and then you got the image processor directly behind it. And this is the stacked CMOS sensor. Okay, so we're looking at a much faster processing unit. I think that this is probably the portion. I think this is probably the portion of the camera on the Panasonic GH5 that they missed. I think that even with their contrast phase detection, had they had a better signal processing unit, they probably could have gotten just a little bit better autofocus performance. I don't know that to be a fact. I'm not an engineer. But the digital signal processing has a lot to do with how fast your autofocusing points are able to track your subject. That may have been the major problem with the Panasonic GH5. And if that is the case, if they do dump any level of money into some R&D really, really fast, they might be able to get a fantastic camera out in the GH6. So 20 frames per second, continuous shooting. I mean, that's just, again, blackout-free shooting, silent, vibration-free, anti-distortion shutter. This camera is just going to dominate. So 14 frames per second with a high-end DSLR, 20 frames per second with the A9, Again, we've already talked about the 60 calculations per second during 20 frames per second. I mean, this is a beast of a camera. This blackout free shooting is a huge deal. And honestly, even with it going that fast, I've not ever been all that annoyed with it, to be perfectly honest with you. And I know that a lot of people, thought that the last generation, with just the very minimal lag and blackout, they were perfectly comfortable with it. They were saying, this is totally usable now. This is on par with my high-end DSLRs. But under no circumstances, in any way, shape, or form, can a traditional DSLR do blackout free. The mirror has to cover up that little telescope going into your viewfinder. There's no way to get around that. So this, for a lot of people that want to do high burst shooting and want absolutely zero lag, zero blackout, they want to do those really fast tracking shots, this is going to kill the DSLR. For those high speed burst sports photographers. Because you could have a choice between some lag, or you could spend a whole lot less and get no lag. As long as Sony actually supports those professionals, this camera is going to murder a lot of high-end DSLRs. So, and you really do. You have to call a spade a spade. I mean, when stuff is amazing and it's actually going to be a huge impediment to the market as it stands already, you have to say those kind of things. This is disruptive technology. All right, now I don't know about you guys, but that tracking to me looks insane. If it is actually able to do what they're showing here, I don't know if this is simulated or not. A lot of times the hype material is actually simulated and it's not real. But if this camera genuinely is able to track a moving subject like that, now obviously you've got the white snow in behind the skier, and she's got a very contrasty outfit. But there's a chance that she could accidentally, her silhouette could move up against the trees. I don't know if that would throw the autofocusing system off. But if this autofocusing system genuinely is able to track, like they're depicting it right here, I mean, that is just, that's far and beyond what's currently out there, including what Sony shooters already have. I do think that a lot of wedding photographers, a lot of bar mitzvah, anyone that needs to be quiet, especially if they're shooting like babies and they're asleep or they don't want to. Yeah, it's crazy. So no more mechanics as far as the electronic shutter. Most electronic shutters they have that distortion problem. Apparently, Sony seems to think that they have figured it out. And have removed that. See, that's actually a good point. The silent shooting right before someone's about to jump off a diving board, or they're waiting for the gunshot, or they're, you're at a golf course. All of these are exactly the situations where you would want a silent shutter. And the fact that they are showing it in sports situations, they know who's going to be buying this camera. This is going to be a sports shooter's dream. So apparently they've got a anti-distortion shutter. High speed readout minimizes the distortion. So now you will not have the distortion of the moving objects anymore. That's what we've had to deal with up to this point. So if you did high burst, either on the A6500 or whatever, you would get that basically it was rolling shutter, only for stills. So again, very, very big deal. It's a little hard for me to believe that they've been able to get this much crammed into basically the same form factor as the A7 line. I don't know if it's going to be a bit bigger or not. I don't think they've actually released any specific camera dimensions as of this point right now. But what we're looking at is something that's at least very similar to what we've already seen. So, Captain Scott says, I'm a Sony professional in the Pro program. It's 2 bodies and a minimum of 2 lenses. Okay, so not a bad point of entry whatsoever. If you bought 2 of these at $4,500 a piece, in 2 lenses, let's just say, a really nice prime and a good zoom, your 70 to 200, or, for wedding photographers, your 24 to 70 and your 70 to 200, you're in. And you would have 2 Pro bodies for the price of 1 Canon 1DX Mark II. So there you go. Mark Swain says, is the 4K... is the 4K capabilities the same as the A99 Mark II? I don't know. I know that the A99 had a problem with the exposure, the f-stop being locked at a specific stop. So I don't know if what I do know is what I read, in that it was full 6K readout, downscaled to a 4K, no pixel binning. So there's that. Ivan says, this camera is better for photo or video. It sounds to me like it might be good for both. But it is because of the burst, because of the high frame rate, and because it is going to be able to do all that in RAW. This, in my personal opinion, this is basically the high-end sport shooter's camera. I can genuinely see... someone picking up this camera as their main and an A6500 as their secondary, because again, both of those cameras are perfectly tailored with high burst shooters in mind. You might have someone that's using this new A9, they take a bunch of shots, they run their batteries out, they ask their assistant to hand in the A6500, they get a few bursts while the batteries are being changed, they swap back over to their main camera. That's how I see it playing out. Joe says 20 frames per second, but how many shots will be in focus? That's what will make it or break it. Dude, and you're 100% right. You are. But you also have to combine the autofocusing system with what they now have as far as that burst. Okay, the burst and the buffer. Most sports photographers, let's assume that it only got 50% right. Okay, let's assume that it got 50% right. Most sports shooters, they're only using maybe 1, 2, 3 shots total out of all the stuff that they shoot during an event. They shoot the guy right before he drops the ball in the basket, or right before the hit at the plate is made, the home run hit. They might sell a few to some other outlets just because they can't make any money off the other 10,000 shots that they shot that night. But yeah, would I like for it to be accurate? Absolutely. And I think the fact that they have a vastly upgraded and improved autofocusing system now in this camera, I'm hoping we are on par to probably see one of the best sports cameras ever to be developed by mankind. I mean, this is kind of some history being made as far as I can tell, based on their hype, based on their specs on paper. The Abel's Fable says they have the camera size on their website. Okay, so I haven't been to their website yet. I've been trying to just keep up with the announcement as the details have been coming in. I've also been on their YouTube channel as soon as they started releasing these videos. So, Euro Video Productions, hey, love your channel, great reviews. Paul from New York, thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. Let's see, what else are they saying right now? I'm checking back on the announcement. We've got a bunch of live blogs going on as new information is being released. I'd like to know what you guys think. I mean, I know that not everyone watching the stream right now is a full-on true blue professional where you actually make your money from your photography, but I'd be interested to see how many of you that have, fast-moving subjects as hobbies, would you actually be willing to invest, $4,500 in a camera like this? I mean, would this even be on your radar? Or most of you guys here just to root your Sony team on? There's always that. Let's see. Okay, so it looks like we do have a couple of new announcements. It does look like they've now announced a list of accessories. The NPF Z100 rechargeable battery. It's a high-capacity battery with approximately 2.2 times the capacity of the NPFW50 series, which is what we've all been using. So if they've managed to squash that much extra energy into the same size battery, I really do hope it's not any bigger. I hope it's the exact same size so that we can reap the benefits of it as well. But yeah, that's pretty amazing. If they were able to get it in the same size battery, it looks almost identical, but you can't really tell from some of the photos that they have uploaded already and been available. The new Fuji C3 vertical grip. It provides the same operation, handling, and design as the A9 camera, but it also doubles the battery life and allows for USB charging via the camera body. So there you have that. So there's a really good chance that a lot of people will just attach a battery pack to it. Or use, a power bank and just constantly feed this thing with power. I'm interested to know maybe like what their circuitry is. Is it going to, if you charge via USB, is it going to charge the battery that went dead first and then start dumping over into the other battery, or how that whole thing's going to work? So it's also going to have the multi-battery adapter kit. It's going to be an external multi-battery adapter kit capable of functioning as an external power supply for 4 Z-series batteries and as a quick charger. Okay. See, they've already thought this stuff out. They're already pre-planning this stuff out. So it's called the NPA MQZ. This is a horrible, horrible name. They really need to give it something flashy and amazing. NPA MQZ 1K multi-battery adapter kit. It's going to hold 4 Z-series batteries as a quick charger, and the kit comes with 2 packs of NPFC 100 rechargeable batteries to boot. Okay. All right, now it says here that they are also going to have a GPX1 EM grip extension. It's a grip extender with the same look, feel, and design as the A9 body, but enables more solid hold on the camera. So it sounds to me like they're just going to release this. If you want all the functions and benefits of the camera, but you don't want to use the double grip. So if you want to keep the camera, fairly lightweight, they're going to have a grip extension product available for this camera. That's some forward thinking. That is some seriously forward thinking. That's just crazy. Like, it's just so good. I mean, they're also going to have the eyepiece cup. And it looks like it's going to have one with a locking mechanism, blah, blah, blah. They're coming out with a brand new battery charger. The BC-QZ1 battery charger, quick charging battery charger, charges 1 new Z series. That's extremely fast. Wow, I'm actually impressed. A Z series battery in approximately 2.5 hours. So, not bad at all. And it's also going to have a screen protect glass sheet that they're coming out with. I guess they're trying to capitalize a little bit on people wanting to keep their screens nice and pristine. No price available on those things, though. Again, the price of the camera of the brand new Sony A9 is going to be $4,500 US and $6,000 Canadian. That is for the full frame interchangeable lens. It will ship out May 19th of this year. So we do have a lot of a lot of notes and stuff here. It is going to be fully magnesium alloy. The max resolution is going to be 6,000 by 4,000. The image ratios are going to be standard 3:2 and 16:9. Effective megapixels 24. Sensor photo detectors, we're going to have 28 megapixels. The sensor size, it is in fact a full frame. The sensor type is a backside illuminated CMOS sensor. The color space is going to be an sRGB and Adobe RGB. I mean, this is just an amazingly capable camera. I was expecting some stuff, and I mean, the rumor mill had already cranked out the fact that this was going to be a 20 burst shooter that was probably going to be low resolution, although some of the rumors got it a little bit wrong. A lot of people were thinking that those features might actually end up on the higher resolution camera, which to me didn't make sense. That's the reason I pegged it at the lower resolution. If you're going to have that level of burst, there's no way you want every single one of your photographs to be, 72 megapixels big. So Mark Swain says, if this is a quote-unquote sports camera, it is crazy they didn't allow 10-bit and 60p on the 4K side as well. Yeah, but you also have to understand that there are cameras in this, not even in this line, that would actually be better suited for sports than this one. If you're doing any kind of fast moving, you don't want a full-frame sensor. You really don't. The frame is too big. You get rolling shutter really bad. Honestly, one of the best cameras that I can think of right now off the top of my head for video, if you wanted to stay within the Sony ecosystem, would be either the Sony RX10 Mark II or Mark III. And that's no joke. Especially with the Mark III, if you really don't get a very good seat, if you didn't get invited to the last second, you've really got to be back up there in the nosebleeds. You get the RX10 Mark III. 600 millimeters, small 1-inch sensor, decent ISO performance, and very low rolling shutter because the sensor is much, much smaller. Joey says, still no side articulation screen. And it's true, but I don't think that this particular camera is geared for that market. I think that they are definitely working on something for all of us that have been screaming, bitching, and moaning for a fully articulating screen. I believe that will be coming this year. And if I'm wrong, I'm just going to keep pissing and moaning about it, I guess. Fred Orange says, damn, well, Europe is always more expensive on that department. Yeah, I mean, the prices are basically relative to, what your current exchange rate is. So, just have one of your friends over in the States buy it for you, and you can send them the cash, buy it on the gray market. Joe says 24 megapixels and 20 frames per second is going to be some serious bandwidth. And that's what I said. When I first saw it, I was like, there's going to be a lot of throughput in this particular camera. So either they have to upgrade the digital signal processor, which I believe they have. The new backside illuminated sensor apparently is improved. It's new and improved. And there's also, it's big enough. The digital signal processor is still big enough and beefy enough that it can handle up to 20 frames per second in full uncompressed RAW. Up to 241 frames. So that's a full 10 seconds roughly. That in full uncompressed RAW, you can lay on that shutter button. You can start taking the shot 3 seconds before the action portion of it starts and have a full 7 seconds after it happens to make sure that you get a little bit before and a little bit after, and then you can kind of cherry pick. 20 frames per second is almost as close. I mean, that's pretty damn close to just full motion. 20, most people shoot at 24 frames per second cinematically. You do get that natural motion blur. This is getting really, really close to you just being able to pick a full frame, uncompressed, raw photograph directly out of the camera and just use it. So, like I said, there's no one is going to be bitching about this unless on paper it doesn't translate into practice. That's where we'll start having some issues. But, you know, thus far, there's only been a few things, and that's been maybe like on the smaller details as far as like ergonomics, battery life, the overheating, that kind of thing. But as far as the actual feature itself, Sony has been listening. And I do think that they have done a fairly good job of responding to those demands because obviously they're hungry. They are hungry for the camera market. You know, they just, you know, overtook Nikon here in the US in full frame sales. So they're actually hungry. So Nikon and Canon had everything to lose, and yet they just sat up there on their hi-hats and they didn't do anything. Sony's actually been doing some stuff, and it's dragging so much of their business away from Canon and Nikon. So, you know, I have to give it to them. I like companies that innovate. Fuji did a fantastic job on their last camera. You know, Canon and Nikon, they've just been too comfortable. It's time for a change, really. So I'm not mad at them at all. Let's see. Millie says, that's what I thought, but the body looks like that it had a lot of... Okay, sorry, she was talking to somebody else. Euro Video Production says, seems to be really nice, but $3,500 body only would be more acceptable these days with so many other options available coming soon as well. And like I said, this camera is going to be solely targeted for the professional market. I mean, if you don't make your money, if you don't keep a roof over your head because of your photography, if this is not your sole job, then this is definitely not going to be the camera for you. Definitely not going to be the camera for you. But if you actually have to do this job day in and day out, whether you're a pet photographer, sports shooter, wedding photographer, anything like that, this camera is going to apply heavily. And this would definitely be for that crowd. And are there, you know, are there other options? Absolutely. There are definitely other options out there, but I don't think that all of them check off all these boxes at the exact same time. And for a lot of people, they're just going to have to compare these options side by side with the camera of their choice. There's just no other way. You would just have to try it out for yourself. And do your comparisons. I mean, that's why I encourage everyone, no matter who you are, do your due diligence. Compare whatever you think your favorite camera is right this second. Always buy it for 30 days. You know, get it off Amazon, use it for 30 days, see if it either meets or exceeds your requirements, and then, and only then, do you sell off your old shit. You don't just go, oh, I'm all in. No one that actually makes their money with their photography, no one ever does that. So, Gaga USA says, so is this the same body as the A7 series? I'm not 100% for sure yet. It looks extremely similar. It is definitely in the same spirit as the A7 line. It might be a bit thicker or a bit taller or a bit chunkier in a few spaces, but I haven't done a side-by-side comparison yet, so I don't know. But it is very A7-like. I would say that they're probably just probably right there neck and neck. Like I said, there might be a few odds and ends change, but the overall size looks almost exactly the same. Joe says, wonder if the video will use binning or full readout. The video is full readout, brother. This is 4K, downscaled from 6K, full pixel readout, no binning whatsoever. So this is going to be the entire sensor, no binning whatsoever. So they are taking 6K from that full frame sensor and then outputting it into 4K. You're going to see some beautiful images come out of this camera. Robert says, still rocking my Sony A7R with the 85mm f1.4 for portraits, but now thinking of an upgrade. And I do believe that a lot of people would. But I don't know that I would necessarily upgrade to this one. You might be talking about another camera, but I wouldn't give up the resolution that was even in the first A7R for this one. Streets of Vancouver says, the price is wholly reasonable in light of the feature set. Absolutely. And a lot of people that have honestly been doing this for an extremely long time, they know that their job depends on their photography, and Canon and Nikon have fleeced the shit out of them. They have only put the best of the best high-end features in the and they hold back just a few things that only the pros want and put it in their $8,000 camera bodies, as opposed to being more proportional with their feature set. That's the reason a lot of people have left Nikon and Canon, myself included. Nikon was probably one of the slowest to divvy out features. They were horrendous on the video side. That was the main reason I just couldn't keep buying them anymore. It was really bad. Streets of Vancouver says, thankfully the video is at 6K and downres to 4K, so the file to maximize micro detail. Absolutely, and that's one of the biggest selling points with a lot of the Sony cameras that don't do the pixel binning, do the full 6K readout. A lot of people are having a really hard time ignoring the absolute amazingness of that extra micro sharpness detail that they get out of their video. So if they really do love an extremely sharp image, you can get it with these Sony cameras. Captain Scott says, it took me 4 months to move from a 5D Mark II with L glass to the A7R Mark II with G Master and Zeiss glass. Being able to use an adapter for my L glass during the move was brilliant. And that's exactly what I ended up doing. I used a mount, and I used all of my old Minolta film glass, and I used my Nikon glass until I felt comfortable. You know, selling a body is no big deal. I could always buy another body again, no problem. But you know, when I got comfortable, it was no problem to let all that stuff go. Joe says, "Oh shit! Full readout on full frame. Oh shit! In next week's news, Canon and Nikon go bankrupt." That might be a bit of hyperbole, sir, but I don't really think that you're going to be all that far off. At least in the market below Canon's cinema line, that's where they're holding on with the tightest grasp. A lot of people love that Canon color. They love the uncompressed raw images they're getting from their C100 line, or C200 or C300 or whichever people are using. But Nikon's in trouble. I don't know about Canon so much, but Nikon is definitely in trouble. Euro Video Production says, would like to see a Panasonic step up to a bigger sensor and play chess here. They're probably not going to. I'd like to see them do it, because I think that they have a lot of amazing stuff that's built in, especially the GH5. If all of those features were on a larger size sensor, oh my God. I can't even imagine how much business they would have pulled away from Sony's growing body of users. Eric Young says, Sony is the king of artificial limitations. The fact that they have no S-Log in here is a kick in the balls to their customers. No, not necessarily. Like, no one that I can think of. I mean, there might be a few. I mean, there are better tools for S-Log. S-Log, I mean, the dynamic range without S-Log, that's an opinion for most people who do a lot of video editing. But I don't know. I really don't know about that one. If they genuinely didn't put S-Log in, I would almost see that as a little bit shitty myself. I'm still bitching at them right now for the fact that they didn't. They still haven't released a time-lapse app. You know, like, that should be built into these effing cameras. You know, there's no reason that we should have what is it, $10 extra add-on purchase from their lame-ass app store. I hate the Sony's Play Memories app. It's just terrible. Major Motion Pictures, where is the 4K 60? I don't know, man. If they happen to do 4K 60, I'm not for sure that it would be in this camera. Whatever camera that they plan on releasing that has the next upgraded version of their video features, whether that be the A7S series of cameras or something like that, I think that that's where it'll be. I don't necessarily think that this was the right recipient camera for that feature. The Photography Junkie says, there are comments about its video capabilities, but I agree with Mark that this isn't the camera for that. And like I said, I don't necessarily support any camera manufacturer on purposely withholding features with the intent to try and sell you another effing camera. Okay, Sony has up until this point been really good about that. They have released really amazing things consistently across the line. Now, you know, the A6000 doesn't have S-Log, but the A6300 does, and the A6500 does. But I think that the A6000 honestly has sharper image quality than the A6300 or the A6500. That's just me. So, I mean, you know, they had to kind of make a choice and decide between, you know, how much do we charge these people for these functions, and at what price point should we release them so that we don't make our cameras too unaffordable for the lower end consumers or the middle tier consumers or the higher end consumers. You know, there's going to be a lot of different people out there with varying budgets, varying skill levels, and varying requirements as far as what they need to get done on a day-to-day basis. So it's good that they are having an expansion in their total camera lineup. You know, a 5000, a 6000, a 7 line, A9, their A mount line, their compact camera, the RX series, the RX 100s, the RX 10s. I mean, they are exploding with a massive amount, not to mention their action cam line, which is doing phenomenally well. It's chewing into the GoPro line like crazy. Major Motion Picture says, I'm a video director and I really love the specs, but will it have the ISO sensitivity of the A7 S series? Is this supposed to replace the A7S entirely? No, this is not supposed to replace the A7S. This is a completely different camera. It will not have the ISO range. It only goes up to about a 204,000. That's 204,800. That's expanded ISO. It has a native ISO of up to 51,200. I do not think that this is meant to become the low light king in the lineup. This is a completely different animal. If you need low light capabilities, you stay with the A7 until they announce a Mark III, or they say this is the camera that's supposed to be replacing the A7. This is not the camera for you. Joe says, if someone wanted dedicated cinema camera, well, Blackmagic has your product. And Blackmagic does have some amazing cinema products, and they are extremely affordable. So for those of you that don't like, Canon raping you on their cinema cameras, I think that Blackmagic is poised to steal a lot of that business away from Canon. Streets of Vancouver says, the only slightly perplexing aspect of the A9 is the addition of the Ethernet port. Adding a full-size HDMI port would have made more sense. Not to them, not for this particular reason. This is going to be a fantastic feature for high-burst sports shooters, high-burst wedding photographers, those kind of things. They'll be able to, instead of ripping out their SD cards every few seconds or having to swap them out consistently, they just run over there to their dump station, plug the Ethernet cable up to an offloading center, and it will download. I mean, we're talking, whatever Cat5 cable has the ability to offload now. I mean, gigabytes per second, much, much faster than what you could with transferring via card. And you also have to think, too, that most professionals are going to have two bodies. So while if you only did have one, you can still pop the cards out of the camera and transfer them and pop some new ones in. You have a lot of professionals who are going to have two camera bodies. So when they get done and either the batteries are done or the cards are toast, you just sling that camera off, you have your assistant hand you another one, and you go right back to shooting with fresh cards and fresh batteries. Eurovideo says 5D Mark IV could have been better. Laughing out loud. Maybe we'll hit 10 years for 5D Mark V. Eric McFarland says, why are they announcing a new prosumer when are they announcing a new prosumer A7 model? I'm not for sure. We do know that they have yet another announcement at NAB in 4 days. 4 days. Yeah, the 23rd. And they're also having an announcement in June. So they could be releasing those announcements during that time, but we don't know exactly what they're planning to announce. But we do see a brand new model number that has been registered that is not what they are calling the A9. So it's a completely different new model number inside of the A7 naming scheme, which is usually like, you know, I put it in my video the other day, but it's usually like a WW and then a 3-2 and then 4 numbers after that. All of those, that naming system, that naming scheme goes with the A7 line. So it looks like they have a new A7 camera on the horizon. So I'm hoping that that comes out really, really soon. Joe says, Canon is supposed to upgrade their 5D Mark IV's 4K abilities to something worth a shit soon, but we'll see. Dude, they should have done that years ago. Canon was in the forefront. They should have had that done years ago. Too little, too late. It'll be just like it was with Nikon and me. I was just like, dude, this is the best you got? I've waited for 2 years and that's all you got? So, I don't know, man. I'm not going to put much faith in their, you know, 4K abilities. It's just like, shut up. I mean, am I the only one that just went wah wah when they announced not only what the codec was? I mean, who the F uses motion JPEG? Okay, I mean that right there right there should have let everyone and their mama know that Canon was not serious about video in their DSLR line of cameras anymore. I mean, it was just horrible. Heavily disappointed in that. All right, so what else we got here? Warren says Fuji did two-ish, 2 cards. Sony should have done the same. They did. They put 2. Yeah, they did. They put 2 cards in. Unless you misspelled something there, this new camera does in fact have dual card slots. One being USH or one USD Mark II or U ultra high speed. Yeah, whatever. Mark II cards going. We're good. So, and I believe that supports up to 300 or 250 megabits per second, something like that. It's an insanely fast card. So UHS, yeah, okay, he did misspell it, so I wasn't crazy. A boy named Amber says $4,500, still no articulating screen and no touch focus. This is not for that. The articulating screen really doesn't make much sense on this camera, but they did say that this is going to have a touch interface. They didn't just say touch autofocus, touch interface. So there's a very good chance. I mean, I can't say this with 100%. I can't assure you 100%, but I do think that this is in fact going to have a full touch interface. At least that's what I think. So if anyone can search that out for me, verify either one way or the other, I would appreciate that. But according to the specs that I saw earlier, it said something about a touch interface. Captain Scott says, I would expect something video announced at NAB. If any A7 series, it would be the A7S Mark whatever. And I 100% agree. If that is what they're planning to do. If not, I do know that they have some new camcorders like the handy cams. Potentially brand new 4K E-mount interchangeable lens handy cams coming. I would totally be down for that. To be perfectly honest, I think I would probably buy one at this point. And I think a lot of other people would too, especially if they kept the form factor, relatively small, but it would definitely have to have the interchangeable lenses. P. Kamar says, planning to make a switch from Nikon to Sony. I love Nikon ergonomics. How good or similar to Nikon ergonomics is Sony ergonomics? It just depends. I mean, mostly what Nikon makes is DSLRs. If you're looking for a DSLR-like experience and you really like that form factor, I would suggest just going with the Sony A99 series. Or if you don't mind the A-mount, you could always buy any of the A-mount cameras that they have. So, and you would get really similar experiences with that. So, Joe says, turns out Canon said that the firmware may actually cause some bodies to overheat in 4K. Seems 4K overheating isn't just a Sony issue. And that's probably true, especially if you don't plan for it. If you're going to incorporate 4K, you're going to have to put that larger digital signal processor in there to deal with all that data, and it's got to have the room to breathe. It's got to be able to breathe. Joe also says, Motion JPEG looks great on paper, not worth the crap in real life. And we all knew that, because Motion JPEG is trash. Absolute trash. Euro Video Production says, Panasonic all the way. Just stretch the sensor a bit bigger. Haha. Well, and, if they ever did release a bigger sensor, I think that it would attract a lot more people. Some people are just not as comfortable with that smaller sensor, but I have to be honest, I've used 3 or 4 of Panasonic's cameras, all 1 inch, and their ISO performance is getting really damn good at this point. So good that I wouldn't mind having a Panasonic camera for stills. I'm still a little iffy, but not totally upset about the video quality. It's just that goddamn autofocus. It's got to get better. Panasonic has got to get better. So let me go ahead and I'm going to check and see if we have any more announcements here. Any updates. And for those of you that are just joining, we're talking about the brand new Sony camera. They did release a couple more videos, and I'm going to go ahead and play one here for you guys right now. I don't know how well that's translating on your side. I know that I'm broadcasting in 1080p, but this is, in fact, in 4K, I believe. But that dynamic range looks amazing. I can still see detail in her pants, and this is a perfect scenario for testing out high dynamic range. And this is in video, mind you. And she is perfectly in focus. Let me back that up. I want to see if that rolling shutter... I think they kind of cut it off right before they had to do the quick pan directly to their left. Beautiful imagery, though. I mean, we're looking at 4K 3840 by 2160. Sony always has had pretty damn good dynamic range, so I wasn't really all that worried about them actually performing in that particular area. But if you guys actually want to watch this video, Sony does have a camera channel on YouTube that you guys can go and check out. You can see that there at the bottom of the screen. And obviously, they had to do it in a very cold region to keep the 4K overheating to a absolute minimum. Am I right? Am I right, kids? All right, so a little bit of pun directed in Sony's direction, so that way the Panasonic guys don't feel like I'm playing favorites. They always think that, though. So anyway, pretty good performance. I mean, all of their material, again, this is hype material, so don't base your final purchasing decision based on their hype material. All this stuff will have to be tested. I'm going to put in a pre-order for this particular camera. If I can get my hands on it, I want to test it out myself. Like I said, I don't really know that I could put this camera to its... I don't know that I could put this to its ultimate test. I mean, I am hoping at some point that that they have developed a sensor technology that no longer overheats. Obviously, Sony is not going to expose the fact that it overheats in their own promotional material. But as soon as the reviews start coming out, I mean, we're either going to love it or we're going to blast it right out of the gate. And there's no one thinks that us Sony reviewers are all that critical of Sony, but we are. We bash Sony all the time because we love them so much. They're actually doing some shit, and we want them to get a whole lot better. So we don't kiss their ass. Whenever a Sony product manager, whenever I talk to a Sony product manager, I tell them exactly what I think. What are the problems I'm having? What's going on? What sucks? What's amazing about the camera? And their product manager team is relatively young, so they're willing and able to take a lot of harsh criticism and actually listen to that stuff and not get pissed off, not get offended, and not blackball you or not talk to you. You know, so. Streets of Vancouver says Panasonic also doesn't do full frame sensor with full pixel readout on that full frame sensor. That's true. I think that the GH5, I don't think they crop in on 4K on the GH5, which was a good move on their part. So in theory, they can get full sensor readout, but it's just a small effing sensor that having full sensor readout on a full frame is just like, damn, you know? And you've got the GH5 costing, what, $2,000? So you get a much bigger, beefier camera with a tiny bitty sensor. So Grenady M says, Joe, Panasonic does not have any issues with overheating. Yes, we know that because they have a larger form factor. And I just don't think that they have the DSP inside the camera that can actually process the data fast enough to really generate any heat. Again, I could be wrong, but that's just my theory. Streets of Vancouver says, wait, wrong one. A boy named Amber said he was watching the live review and there was no touchscreen. Okay, if that's true, I am a little bit disappointed in that. Again, I'm not as pissed off at the fact that there might not be a touchscreen on this particular camera, simply because most of the people that are going to be buying this particular camera are going to have the camera up to their eye and they're going to be using the EVF. So not having a touchscreen, not incorporating that extra cost into this particular camera makes sense. But it would have been nice for those on occasion that wanted to do video and maybe being able to do some touch to focus and stuff like that. Euro Video Production says the Canon 5D Mark III with the Magic Lantern and the right cards is almost better than the 5D Mark IV for video purposes. Other than that, the Mark IV is pretty fast for photos, but totally outdated today in 2017. 100% agree. If you want to do videos, P. Kumar says, I want to do videos, then this is definitely not the camera you want to be looking at. There are just better cameras right now that Sony creates that are much better suited for videos. If you want to do videos, I would go with a smaller size sensor. The smaller the sensor, the less rolling shutter you're going to have. Else, you might as well just grab a camera that has a global shutter. One of the best small sensored cameras with an ND filter, built-in ND filter, so, you know, basic higher end, higher level cameras that Sony produces is the RX10 Mark II. I mean, it's getting a little bit long in the tooth at this point, but a lot of people still really love that camera for shooting video, and I think it's only around, I don't know, I want to say $1,200, and the RX10 Mark III is only about $1,400 or $1,500. Let's see, how long have I been on? Over an hour and a half. Holy crap. Or no, almost an hour and a half. So I'm going to cut it off here at about 100 and... Did about an hour and a half, I guess. Unless you guys just want to keep talking. I mean, honestly, I think that all the major points have been announced as of this point. I'm really, really impressed with this camera for sports people. People that were looking to get in this camera. I can see a lot of people buying this camera and in conjunction having an A6500 as their backup camera, or even a couple of A6500s as their backup camera. While their assistant is, you know, reloading batteries or swapping out cards or offloading images, you know, they can use the A6500, still be able to do some really amazing burst shooting. And then when they get their camera back, you know, just toss the A6500 back there and you just go right back to work. I can see those two cameras being really, really nice companion cameras with one another. That may have been their intention all along, I don't know, but having the really fast, capable sports setup in an A7-esque style camera was an amazing choice on Sony's part, because a lot of people are now fairly well acclimated to the A7 line of cameras. They don't, either they really love the ergonomics or don't mind the ergonomics. And then to create an amazing video camera, although I do want to see it have face detection in the next iteration of the A7S, now you also got the high resolution, extremely uncompromisingly high resolution of the A7R Mark II. And now we have a super fast, ultra accurate, apparently amazing autofocus burst camera, uncompressed RAW in this new A9 camera. So, I mean, this is essentially everything that the pros have been wanting and asking for, and Sony is now delivering, and it doesn't really seem like they're holding much back. They may be holding a few things back just to kind of control the prices, because if this camera truly is solely focused on sports or fast-moving subject, high-burst photographers, there's really not much need for the touchscreen. You're going to have it up to your eye tracking, and there's really no need for an articulating screen if your eye is up to the EVF tracking, and really not much use for S-Log either, because it's not, targeted for the video market. Captain Scott says, I couldn't afford to buy it for my production camera, the A7R Mark II, but could possibly replace my backup, the A6300. Joe says, what boggles my mind is why they do not put some heat pipes on the sensor to pump the heat away to a passive heatsink on the camera somewhere, perhaps under the flip screen. I just don't think that they had the room, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, they crushed the size of that sensor down with that new backside illuminated sensor technology. I mean, it is so much thinner now, but I still just don't think that they really had the room to effectively heat sink that stuff out of the camera, away from the camera, and to actually make that possible. So, Captain Scott also says, I saw touchscreen focus, and I thought I did too, but if they didn't, I'm a little disappointed, but I can see where they wouldn't, but I still would like to see it. So, but I do believe that they are actually going to be putting it in this camera. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and I accept it, but I could have sworn that I saw on the announcement that they said this thing was going to have a touch interface. Joe says, it will be a heck of a competitor to the Canon 1DX and that Nikon D whatever. Streets of Vancouver says, thanks for doing the live chat, brother. Much appreciated. Thank you very much. I appreciate you hanging out and doing it with me. Joe says, shows how much I like Nikon. You guys, you're so mean. All right. And Millie says, I feel the same, and I have one, but it's only the D3300, not that great. Liquid cooling. Fred brought up liquid cooling, and I've actually been asking for this for quite some time. I know that they can do liquid cooling. Again, I just don't know that they have the space inside the body to do liquid cooling. I really do hope that, whatever they end up announcing next, okay, because this is a breakthrough camera. A9, high resolution, 24 megapixels is very, very good resolution for the type of photography that this camera is going to be gunning for. Okay, so 24 megapixels, 20 frames burst, uncompressed RAW, up to 240 bursted RAW shots in a single shutter press, over 360 burst shots in JPEG mode, backside illuminated sensor, no blackout EVF. These are just sick features that a lot of people that do high burst shooting, fast moving objects, this is the camera that they have been waiting for. I don't know how well it's actually going to do in real life tests. No one will until we're able to get our hands on them. I'm hoping that they're sending out review copies right now to everyone. I'm going to actually try and get a hold of my B&H rep right after I get off this live stream and see if I can get one for a couple of days to test this thing out. So if I can get one, you guys will be the first to see it. You probably won't be the first to see it. I'm sure someone else will probably get it before me because I'm low on the totem pole. But if I do happen to get one, I will definitely start doing some tests, see how this burst actually goes. I'm extremely excited for this camera. it's going to serve not only a huge niche, but it may really start to eat into some of the big names in camera manufacturing right now for those sports photographers. I mean, I kind of feel sorry for them, because this thing is just a beast. And I'm looking at the form factor right now on the officially released photographs, and to my eyes, the grip is deeper, but it is almost the exact same form factor. It might even be just a little bit thinner in the width department. Yeah, to me it looks almost identical, but like I said, I could be wrong. But 20 frames per second continuous shooting, 60 frames per second AE calculations, blackout free, silent shutter mode when you need to capture those extremely important moments without any noise, vibration free, so you're not going to experience any blur or motion in your shots accidentally. 32,000, not 3,000, 32,000, 1/32,000th of a second shutter speed. So all of you high-speed sync guys are just going to be loving this thing. 693 auto-focusing points with 93% frame coverage. And full frame 4K, 6K downscaled to 4K, full readout, no binning video capture. This is probably one of the best damn cameras I have ever seen in front of my face. If they have genuinely incorporated touchscreen, touch autofocus, gotten rid of the overheating issue, this could be an all-in-one. You might not even need 2 or 3, different Sony bodies. The only other one you would need would maybe be the higher resolution A7R for all that studio and portraiture work. So, at any rate, guys, I want to thank everyone for hanging out with me here on the Photo Video Show live stream edition of the Sony A9. I really do appreciate it. If you enjoyed this content, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up as soon as this video is over. I would appreciate it. It really does help me out. And if you want to help support the channel, I've got links to my Patreon page, and I've got some great photography t-shirts down in the description box below. So any help is appreciated. I will see you guys again on the next one. Peace.